My wife and I have been wanting to grow plants in a basket for a while, and we wanted to hang this basket on some hooks that were left over by the previous owners of this house. And one of the things that really confused us about growing plants in a basket was what the situation was going to be like with the soil and the basket. Are we supposed to just put the soil directly into the basket, or is there some kind of liner that we're supposed to use? And we just didn't really kind of know the logistics about how a plant is exactly supposed to grow inside of a basket. So in this video, I thought I would go ahead and walk you through what we did to set up our plants, transfer it out from the nursery pot that came in, and put it into that hanging basket. So the first thing that we wanted to do was we went on to Amazon, we looked around for hanging basket pots, and we came across this set of 3 different baskets. They came in 3 different sizes, one bigger, medium, and one small one. And one of the first things that we had to figure out was what size are we supposed to use. In our case, we wanted to transfer out our golden pothos from its small nursery pot. This is a really small plant that we got from a local nursery store a couple months back, and we wanted to transfer out into one of these pots. And all of them kind of seemed like they were much bigger than the nursery pot that it came in. So first thing we gotta do is figure out what size we wanted to use. We decided to go with the smallest basket that we had because we felt like that size was going to be pretty appropriate for the size of the plant that we're trying to transfer out. So I think depending on the size of the plant that you have currently, that might give you an idea of what size of pot you're going to use. You can always go bigger, like bigger is always going to be better. Like there's no harm in putting a really small plant into a really big pot. But I think in our particular case, we wanted to use a smaller basket because we thought there might be potential to transfer out some of our bigger plants into those larger pots or larger baskets later, like the snake plant that we have up here in this corner right here. Once we selected the size of the basket that we want to use, the next thing that we had to figure out was what we're going to do with this liner that it came in. So when we opened up the box, we were a little bit confused on what this plastic liner is. It's like this clear film that was just sitting inside of these baskets. It kind of seemed like maybe it was like some kind of packaging material that stuff from Amazon usually comes with. But in this case, for these basket pots, they're actually used as liners to protect the basket, because you don't, depending on what kind of basket you're using, some baskets will actually not hold up very well if it's been exposed to water. It'll start to like kind of fall apart. Maybe the threads will come loose, and the overall structural integrity of the basket will start to degrade if it's just being soaking wet from being in direct contact with the soil. The basket liner isn't always necessary. It kind of depends on what pot you're using or what basket you're using. Some baskets will actually be made of coco coir, and those will handle being wet. Some of them are designed to allow water to pass through it, soak up in the basket, and evaporate out the sides. But usually when you're looking around shopping for baskets, if you get them from online, it'll give you some instructions on what to do. Or you can ask, if you're going shopping around at one of your local stores, you can always ask one of the workers there to explain how it works. But in our case, the baskets that we got, they needed those liners, so we went ahead and used those. One thing that I was a little bit worried about with these liners was that there weren't any drainage holes that came with it. No, I think you might be fine just transferring your pot plant directly into this liner without those holes, but I think there's a greater risk of overwatering your plant, because if you give your plant a little bit too much water, that water is just going to pool up in the bottom and it's not going to evaporate, or has no way to get out. And now I know I said earlier that we don't want any water to get in contact with the basket, but I think if you're considering the trade-off between lower risk of overwatering your plants versus getting your basket a little bit wet, I think I'd rather go with having my basket a little bit wet, just to have that extra protection. So what I decided to do was go ahead and drill some holes in that liner. So I just took one of the drills that we had. We got this from IKEA. And we just went ahead and drilled a handful of holes there to allow excess water to drain out. Okay, that's good. Now I think in the future when we're watering our plants, we're not going to take the entire plant out with this liner and bring it over to get watered and have that water drain out. That's just way too much work, especially if we have to reach up and pull out the plant, unhook it, and bring the whole plant out, untangle it from the rope that it's hanging from. We just didn't want to deal with the hassle. I just want to take a cup of water and pour it into the plant, nice and easy, without having to go through all that hassle. So just keeping that in mind, when I'm going to be watering this plant in the future, I'm going to be really careful not to give it too much water. Otherwise, there's going to be water pouring out from the bottom. it's going to soak up the basket. And like I said earlier, I don't want that to damage the basket in any way. So I'm just going to be a little bit conservative when I add water to my plant. So once we have those holes drilled, the basket is pretty much ready to go. I think since we don't have the plant in there right now, I went ahead and played around with the rope a little bit. I just wanted to see how the basket would fit into the netting there. I thought it would be much easier to figure that out now while it's light with no plant and no soil in there, rather than having to do it with this 5-pound plant pot later on down the road. So once that's all good, I went ahead and transferred my pothos into the new pot. So this process is pretty easy. All you gotta do, I made another video about this that you can check out in the description below. But basically what I'm doing is measure out the depth of the soil that I want to add into the new basket. I go ahead and take the plant out of its nursery pot and then plop it into that basket and then fill in the empty space with some additional soil. And once that's all done, I went ahead and watered my plant. So I took it out with the liner. Since it's already out, since the basket's already out in the open anyways, I might as well go ahead and give it a thorough watering before I hang it up. So I just take it out with this liner, put it in the sink, and then trickled some water into there. I'm kind of treating it like a traditional plastic pot. I just water it enough so that I see some water dripping out at the bottom. And that's going to be a sign that the soil's completely wet and it's all good to go with the watering. So once I've done that, we're like 90% of the way there. Now all we gotta do is put the plant back into the basket and just hang it up. So I put it back into the basket, put it into the rope and netting material, just kind of configuring it so that the basket is gonna be looking upright when I hang it up. So I went ahead and hung it up by one of the hooks left here by the previous tenants here. And it's conveniently placed right next to this window. I guess they've thought about this ahead of time. So once that's done, that's pretty much it, all there is to it. Now we have a plant growing in a basket that's hanging up on our ceiling. And in the future, when I want to water it, all I gotta do is take a cup of water and just pour it down the top. And this is going to be kind of hard to measure, but basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to check it periodically, just stick my finger into the soil and see if I can feel how moist it is and see how much dirt sticks to my finger. That'll give me an idea of whether or not it needs to be watered. Well, that's pretty much it for this video. If you have any questions about that, if there's anything else that surprised you about growing plants in a basket, let me know in the comments and I'll try to get back to you. But other than that, thanks for watching.